probably await. You are going to get that this data loaded is complete, and then you'll get the business process wait completed. Wait which was used. And then, if you use that wait, type it into Workday. You can go to the business process event which was requested. So that's the response, that this data was added. So response is pretty much small. Just kind of an acknowledgement for the inbound web services. So for the request, one-time payment web service. So now you have seen that the kind of structure we have seen by triggering the data manually. What kind of all information was required? So if I just go and minimize this, you will see everything is embedded inside this request. One-time payment request, which has the example namespace, and this is the namespace which is being used in the version. Now, if I open this inside this, there'll be different sections. Based on the data. Some will be kind of default. Since it's a business process operation that you would be doing for the inbound web service, and a business process will be used to update. So these business process sections like business process parameters. Common data. So inside the business process, you will see this will be common for every other web service. So in the business process parameter, there will be options like just to configure in the business process as well. That, whether you want to autocomplete this business process on its own, do you want to run now, or do you want to schedule? What do you want to do when the errors come? Do you want to discard them? Or you don't want to discard them? Any comment? You want to make data uploaded for one-time payments, anything you want. So these are all the basic business process parameters. And these autocomplete and run now derives the behavior of your business process. Do you want to autocomplete it? That means no approvals are being taken. If you want to autocomplete as true, then no approvals will be taken and the business process will move from initiating stage to directly completed and bypass all the approvals and other things. If you don't want the autocompletion, you want the approvals to go through. Then you keep the autocomplete as false. So in that case, your approvals, the business process or the integration will only be responsible for the initiating action. And the rest of the things will go as in the flow. It will be triggered to the people or whoever is approval spending. All those things will, step by step, it will go. So this business process section parameter will be common to across every web service and in the inbound web services section. Now you go to the data section. So if I see here in the one-time payment data section, everything is encoded here. All the information now is needed. For the one-time payment data. That means too. So this similar information. The same thing which you referenced, which you entered in the UI. Similar information is just needed here. A little more information might be needed, because when you go to the UI, you're probably going to the employee directly triggering the payment from there itself. So some of the things you might not need when you are going to the UI because you're going from the object itself. But when you're dealing with web services, templates, you are kind of importing an external data from an external file wherein you want to give each and everything which makes a relation. Let's say you want to do something for the employee. So you have to give the employee ID so that it finds the key. In UI, you are just able to search the employee, and probably from the employee itself, you're going to do the request one-time payment. So in this case, you'll have to give each and every information. Here you were just able to choose the one-time payment plan, but you will not be able to do it in the web service. You have to properly assign a one-time payment ID, which we will be discussing, the reference. So we'll have to use the concept of reference IDs so that they can be uniquely identified when your web service or your template is hitting the Workday, so it does not fail with the validation. The uniqueness of the characters or the ID should be there. So in the one-time payment section, you'll see we have an employee reference wherein it is asking us to give the employee reference wherein you want to give the employee ID. So in the template, you would see that you have the option to give the position ID as well. If a person is having multiple positions in an organization, and you want to initiate a payment for a particular position, then you have to also mention the position ID. Otherwise, you can make your piece just with the employee ID also. So in the employee reference section, you are going to give the employee ID here by changing the type to employee ID. And then in the string value you're going to give the employee ID. So when you go to the template, it will be easy to understand. So here you are giving the employee reference, the same reference that you give in the request, one-time payment that you chose the employee. Same way you're going to choose the employee here. Position reference is not mandatory, but if you have a situation like that, then you can give the position reference. So divide it into data. Now, here you have effective date, just like we chose. When do you want this one-time payment to be effective? So you choose the effective date. The format is this only. Employee visibility date when you want this one-time payment to be visible for the employee. The reason. Now, these kinds of things, the reason thing you have to. You can reason, you cannot just give random. If you see here, we only selected the reason from the particular reasons which are mentioned here. So, since it is not a free text field, you will have to give a proper reason which will work in the terms of reference IDs that we are going to choose from the business process reasons. So now, as you see here, it says the reason reference. So where do you see 0 or more repetitions? Optional? That means it can be more than one. It can happen more than one that can be. It can be more than one reason. References that can be given, depending on the one-time payment you are going to initiate. One or more repetition. That means at least one, but could be more than one repetitions for your one-time payment data. Here, that means if you want to initiate more than one one-time payment for a particular employee. That means you want to initiate 2 one-time payments for a single employee. So these things will be repeated accordingly. As in when you want to process the data. So in the one-time payments of data, you will see you're going to give all the details when your payment wants to be scheduled. So all these things which we see here more or less see, so coverage and date. So you will fill the basic minimum mandatory details which are required and then top of the details which are not required but they are good to have. And you also have that information which is needed for reporting purposes or something. But at least you have to give the mandatory parameters which is defined by the system. All those things you will have to give at least. The rest of the things are optional. So, just like we discussed the amount, or if it's a percentage-based plan, then you're going to give the percentage of otherwise. So these are all optional. If you want to give an amount, you can give the amount. What is the currency that you want to give the amount in? Do not pay. So that tag which we saw send to payroll, so do not pay. True or false? Sometimes you might not match exact fields with what was there in the UI, But you will be able to understand what these are costing to the companies and also all these maybe not very relevant things.